The quiet stillness of an Indianapolis neighborhood was shattered on a January night in 2021. The gruesome scene that unfolded inside a seemingly ordinary home would leave 5 people dead, including a pregnant woman just days away from bringing new life into the world. At the center of this harrowing tragedy was Raymond Childs Jr, a 17-year-old whose anger and cold determination turned a family argument into a bloodbath. It started with a dispute, a trivial disagreement over curfew, that spiraled into unimaginable violence. According to court records, Childs, driven by rage, armed himself and began a chilling rampage. Room by room, he hunted down his own family: his father, Raymond Childs Jr, 42, his stepmother, Kezzie Childs, also 42, his 13-year-old sister, Rita, and his 18-year-old brother, Elijah. The final victim, Elijah's 19-year-old girlfriend, Kiara Hawkins, was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to her injuries, taking her unborn child with her. Childs was arrested the following day, but the community's wounds remained raw. A 5-day trial reopened those scars, laying bare the cold, methodical nature of his actions. The jury, after just 3 hours of deliberation, returned a verdict that echoed the weight of the evidence. Guilty on 6 counts of murder, as well as attempted murder and illegal possession of a firearm. The trial itself was not without drama. Months earlier, a mistrial was declared when a witness, overcome with emotion, confronted Childs in open court. But this time, there would be no interruption, no escape from justice. The story of Raymond Childs III is one of heartbreak and horror, a tale of how a seemingly ordinary argument turned into one of Indianapolis's most shocking crimes. It was a cold and heart-wrenching moment when a 15-year-old boy, identified only by his initials XC in court documents, stumbled out of the chaos that had just unfolded in his home. Shot but still alive, XC managed to escape the gunfire that claimed the lives of his family members. As he was rushed to the hospital, his pain and fear were almost as palpable as the blood seeping from his wounds. The police, desperate for answers, began questioning him. When asked who had shot him, the words that escaped his lips were chilling: Raymond Ronald Leach III. But the story only grew darker from there. As medical staff tried to stabilize him, they asked him about his parents, hoping to track them down for further care. What 90 said next would haunt everyone who heard it. In a voice laced with anguish, he told them, "I think I shot them. They're dead." A boy of just 15 years old, he wasn't only the lone survivor of the horror that had shattered his world. He was now a crucial witness to the brutal execution of his family, offering first-hand testimony to the police about the atrocities that had unfolded. The question that haunted everyone who heard the story was simple, yet unfathomable. Why? Why had Raymond Childs III, a young man with his whole life ahead of him, turned on his own family in such a brutal, unforgivable way? The answer, as senseless as it was, began with something so trivial: a petty argument over a simple request. It all started on the evening of January 23rd, 2021. Childs had left his family's home without permission to stay at his girlfriend's house. This defiance set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. According to the probable cause affidavit, Childs' father called him, demanding that he return home. Between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. on January 24th, Childs finally drove back in a white Chrysler, but what happened next defied comprehension. Childs later claimed to his girlfriend that his father had kicked him out of the house, but the truth was far darker. Instead of an argument, there was a massacre. Childs didn't just return home to face his father's anger. He returned with a deadly purpose. One by one, he executed his family members in cold blood, leaving behind a house soaked in tragedy. Afterward, he drove back to his girlfriend's home, acting as if nothing had happened. But the weight of his actions lingered in the air, leaving behind a 15-year-old survivor who would live with the nightmares of that night forever. It started as just another quiet night, but it ended in unimaginable horror. The chain of events unraveled when J.D., the girlfriend of Raymond Childs III, noticed something odd. Childs had returned to her home after a late-night visit to his family, acting as if nothing was amiss. But then her phone buzzed, a notification from her Citizen app. The alert reported a shooting on 36th Street, followed by another incident on Adams Street, the exact location of Childs' family home. Concerned, J.D. asked Childs if he knew anything about the shootings. He denied it, brushing off her questions, yet her unease only grew. Later that night, as J.D. drove Childs to another location in her Chevy Impala, another unsettling moment occurred. Childs carried a bundle of clothes into her car. When he left the vehicle, he took the bundle with him. But as J.D. drove away, she slammed on the brakes when something slid across the floor of the passenger seat. It was a magazine clip, proof that a firearm had been in her car. Detectives later obtained a warrant to search J.D.'s vehicle. Inside, they found the clip and other evidence linking Childs to the shootings. It wasn't long before law enforcement tracked him down and brought him into custody at the Homicide Division. Meanwhile, the sole survivor of the massacre, Childs' 15-year-old brother, XC, was recovering in the hospital. His testimony would become a crucial piece of the puzzle. XC recounted the horrifying sequence of events. It began when their father asked him to fill a water bottle in the bathroom. Moments later, gunshots rang out. XC heard his father rush out of bed and down the stairs, shouting, "What was that?" Then came the chilling words of his sister, Rita. Raymond shot Elijah. Another shot echoed, followed by their father's anguished plea, "I'm sorry, Raymond. I love you." XC, hiding in the bathroom, made a desperate attempt to escape, but Childs chased him. Begging for his life, 90 offered his older brother money and promised to stay silent. But Childs showed no mercy. He shot XC in the leg, then again in the arm. Miraculously, 90 managed to flee to a neighbor's house, where he collapsed, gravely wounded but alive. He was rushed to the hospital and survived, despite his critical injuries. As investigators pieced together the case, they uncovered more chilling details. 2 firearms were used in the attack. One was found in the family's basement. The other was recovered after a witness, identified as AV, reported that Childs had climbed into his truck armed with a Draco firearm, one that AV recognized as belonging to Childs' father. AV convinced Childs to hand over the weapon, which he then surrendered to the police. The case against Raymond Childs III was airtight, built on the harrowing testimony of his brother, forensic evidence, and a trail of terror that left a community shattered. The courtroom was heavy with silence as the prosecutor addressed the jury, their voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "This isn't about one piece of evidence," they began. "It's about the calculated horror of what unfolded, a response so disproportionate, so chilling, it defies understanding." Raymond Childs III wasn't a man with a history of madness. No signs of mental illness, no medication to cloud his judgment, no chaotic spiral into psychosis. What he carried was far more terrifying. Pure intent. Cold, deliberate, merciless. That night, Childs left his girlfriend's house, his mind already made up. He returned home not to reconcile or reason, but to destroy. The cries of his family didn't sway him. If anything, they seemed to fuel his resolve. "Raymond," his father pleaded, his voice cracking with both fear and love, "I love you." His younger brother, bleeding and desperate, begged, "Please don't shoot me, I won't tell anyone." But there was no mercy. Childs silenced them all. his father, his siblings, his family, erasing their voices and their lives with calculated precision. The defense fought to spin a story of doubt. They pointed to a supposed flawed investigation, floated the theory of two shooters, and even hinted at mistaken identity. But the truth was relentless. Firearms recovered from the scene told the real story. A survivor, the younger brother who miraculously lived, painted a harrowing picture of that night. Witness testimonies and timelines left no room for misinterpretation. Still, the road to justice wasn't smooth. The first trial collapsed into a mistrial when a prosecution witness confronted Childs on the stand, shattering a juror's ability to stay impartial. The retrial bore the weight of immense pressure. Every detail had to be airtight, every argument unassailable. A retrial is like revisiting the scene of a crime. Things are never as they were. Witnesses falter, memories shift, and the edge of clarity dulls. But in this case, the prosecution's resolve remained sharp. After just 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty. The defense's web of doubt disintegrated under the sheer force of the truth. Even now, the case lingers as a chilling reminder of how thin the veil of humanity can be, and how darkness, when left unchecked, can tear through even the strongest of bonds. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that amplifies every breath, every heartbeat. The prosecutors stood, their voice steady but heavy with the weight of the story they were about to tell. When a mistrial happens, whether because of jury misconduct or a witness's actions, it's like starting a race you've already run. You're bruised, but you go back in, knowing every misstep could mean justice slipping away again. This wasn't just any case. Raymond Childs III had faced a mountain of charges, multiple counts of murder, each carrying a potential sentence of 40 to 65 years, attempted murder, another 20 to 40 years, and a weapons charge for carrying a firearm without a permit. It was a grim tally. But the question on everyone's mind wasn't about his guilt. That had been decided. It was about his future. Would this 21-year-old ever walk free again? The prosecutor's tone shifted, their words cutting through the courtroom like a blade. Let's be clear, I don't believe he should. Not for crimes like this. They acknowledged the growing legal trend, arguing that individuals under 26, with still developing brains, deserve leniency. It's science, they said, but science doesn't erase the horror of what Childs did. The severity of these crimes, the sheer number of victims, it demands the harshest penalty. This isn't about youth or potential for rehabilitation. This is about justice. The prosecutor paused, their eyes scanning the room. Yet the defense will argue. They'll bring in friends, family, maybe even psychologists. They'll plead for mercy, for understanding. They'll say his age, his brain development, his circumstances, these are reasons to spare him. But how can mercy exist in the shadow of what he's done? As the sentencing loomed, another legal question surfaced. Should the judge impose consecutive sentences, stacking each penalty to reflect the magnitude of the crime? Or should they be served concurrently, treating the murders as one catastrophic event? For me, the prosecutor declared, their voice resolute, it's not even a debate. Each life lost deserves recognition. Anything less would dishonor the victims. Then the room seemed to hold its collective breath as the prosecutor turned to the story of the surviving brother, the haunting detail that had gripped the jury and the public. Shot in his leg and arm, bleeding, barely able to move, this young man pulled himself to a neighbor's house. He didn't just survive, he became the voice for the dead. He told us what happened in that house. His strength, his sheer will, is the reason we stand here today, seeking justice. The prosecutor's voice faltered, just for a moment, as the weight of the tragedy settled over the room. It's unimaginable what he endured, what all of them endured. This isn't just a case of law. This is a reckoning for a family torn apart in the most brutal way. The silence returned as the prosecutor sat down, the story they had told lingering in the air. At that moment, the courtroom wasn't just a place of judgment. It was a place where the fragility of life, the darkness of human nature, and the unyielding pursuit of justice collided.